And then they're like, "Oh, that's so cool. What is that?" And there was a science teacher. I'm like, "Oh my god,
Yeah.
help me! I want to die."
The school.
We're on the air
The
now,
school
guys.
district-
Just FYI, I shared the pop-out chat. Welcome, everybody. We had several people waiting for this broadcast to start. One of which was
let's see who's all hanging out here. All do we have the
Murders
do have the
coming
third?
in.
Chatty chat.
Chat.
Maybe.
Yo, there we are.
Oh, what did you crack open?
I just cracked open a Shasta or Shasta. I don't even say it's a sparkling water that is draft root beer flavored.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought this was going to be like your...
I thought you were really letting off steam.
No, well, I kind of am, but yeah, I have it going over there. I don't know how I'm actually going to get this to work. I keep on reinstalling Windows and yeah, like I have an SSD that I'm trying to make my boot drive, but when I make it my boot drive, apparently it's like installing the OS in two places. So it's a lot. It's a load of fun. We got Norm, we got Mur, and yes, that's right, Mur. We are going to be doing Trent's top 10.
Oh, he's on his way, by the way.
Yes, Trent is one of those ingredients that is optional. We got several people though that have come here. So thanks y'all for coming out. Yeah, he's on his way. He said he's going to be here. Welcome.
It took a while. He had to break out of the locks I put on the basement.
BT Dubs, Norm, Andy, what is wrong with you?
I don't know. Maybe me impressed.
Well, Norm, hey, really awesome. Everybody who's listening right now, you should check out the cardboard. Oh, not conjecture. Cardboard conjecture that Norm has started. He's done his first episode. Hey, there's Paul. Welcome, Paul. Norm just deleted his Facebook account. This must be in the wake of knowing that Facebook is selling all of your information to whoever is bidding.
I just figured that was always happening.
I should be of high value. They're just going to see how many times I checked on the John Company BGG page. That's all. He really likes this obscure game. This is odd.
I will say this.
Time I felt,
Go ahead. Andy, you see that? Mur spent the whole day learning how to play TKR, Three Kingdoms Redux.
Oh, that's good stuff. I love Three Kingdoms.
All day?
Oh, I kind of put my foot in my mouth one time about that. There was like a guy at some meeting we were at. He was talking about internet and privacy. And he's like, I want everything to be private so that, the government doesn't know everything about me. I'm like, oh, it's cute. You think you still have privacy. Then after the meeting was all over, someone looked over. She's like, do you know he has paranoid schizophrenia? And I'm like, oh, crap. Oops.
Nicely done.
Yeah, it's
like,
weird.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's funny because we willingly carry a device around that tracks us all the time, and it's completely voluntary. But we have to have a cell phone on us 24/7, or we feel like we don't have an arm or something. It's hilarious if you think about it. It's like, dude, you're worried about just needing your cell phone. No, I need my cell phone. I gotta check Facebook. I gotta check my Twitter. I gotta check all this stuff 24/7.
Yeah.
I always tell my students I'm old enough to remember days before internet, but young enough to feel like I've lost an appendage when the Wi-Fi goes down.
Yeah.
Oh, but if my kids are on the computer and I want to get off, I just turn off the Wi-Fi and it's like the apocalypse went down at my house. I'm like, man, when I had to use a phone, we had to spin the dial, guys. Come on.
Yeah. The fun one, years ago, we were in one of the fancier hotels in Chicago, so that for a chess tournament for my kids, and we were down in the lobby for the parking garage, so the old outdated lobby never gets updates or anything.
Uh-huh.
And my son looked over and he's like, Daddy, why are there springs on the phone? I was like, looked over, I'm like, oh God. Those are called cords, son. That's what phones used to have.
We just have to connect those to the computer, and they made this funny noise when we dialed out to connect to the internet.
Now,
we had modems.
The one thing I seriously miss about dial-up was the horrible things I used to do to my brother. Because he'd be playing like a game and get to like a critical part, and I'd wait for him to be like acting all tense. He's like, I'm going to do it, and then I pick up the phone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you online? Oh, my bad.
Oh, that disconnected. You died. Oh, that sucks. I'm sorry.
It sounded important.
And this is why Andy likes 18xx games.
Well, you can just flip the board instead of
the best move was Blaster Master, where they had a level when they had like items and little islands you could never get to, which was just a trick. And he was on his last life, and I'm like, I found an invisible bridge to that island. It's right there. And he ran into it, like died. I'm like, my turn, and grabbed the controller.
All right. Well, we have been joined now by Trent, I believe.
Yes. I said hi and no one said anything.
Oh,
was that you, Trent?
I didn't actually hear it, so I didn't know it was you at least.
Welcome, this weird voice.
Nice of you to show up, dude.
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, a podcast about board games. Tonight is the episode you've all been waiting for, Trent's top 10 games of all time. He has been gaming since the early 80s, since Focus was the Spiel des Jahres winner, and he's been around for a very, very long time, playing lots and lots of games, pretty much uninterrupted, right, Trent?
Yep, pretty much.
Well, Trent's going to be giving his top 10 in today's episode. I've also got 2 other guys here to join me. We have Andy Dennison. How you doing today, Andy?
Pretty good. Mostly over illness. Yesterday was not so good.
It's good, yeah. It seems like it's been going around, and I think that's the case for a lot of people. You know, hopefully you're healing up well from any illnesses you've had. I know that was my brother's case, and he was calling me earlier. So good to hear that you're doing better. How's the wife doing there, TC? I know that was kind of her issue recently.
We are on the upward hill. Everything's well. She's just a little tired. Everything's good. My kids are well. I am glad to be on talking to friends because it was an absolutely brutal day at work today, but that's in the past. Let's talk about some games with Trent. I'm excited to hear his top 10.
That's right. That's TC Reed, who's joining as well. So we got all 4 of us to talk about Trent's top 10 games. Yeah, things are going pretty well here. We've also been super busy. Started a tennis season. My wife's got tonight is the parents' night for their play, this high school play that she directs, and then tomorrow will be the first performance, and there's one on Saturday, and it is almost main. Almost main is the play. So very cool little thing where you've got like 18 shared lead roles, which made it so there was, believe it or not, very little drama regarding the drama of, like a lot of times whoever gets the lead role is really contentious and stuff. So anyway, I wish her luck with tonight's parent night, which is ongoing as we record. And tomorrow, I guess the old adage, break a leg. So first, before we get started, let's thank our sponsor, Game Surplus. Carmen's just been doing an awesome job of keeping that website up to date. And I know that right recently here, they had a lot of the new expansions that were recently released. I know Fields of Arla Tea and Trade has really been making a splash in our local group. You can find that and other games available on GameSurplus.com. Don't forget to check the Good Board Ugly Picks section. And use the coupon code GoodBoardUglyPicks, all one word, lowercase or uppercase, doesn't matter the case. When you check out, use that as a coupon. You get 10% off the already discounted prices. Check them out, GameSurplus.com. So let's go ahead and
wait.
Whoa.
2 words. John Company is available at Game Surplus, and you can get the podcast discount for it. Go pick it up.
That's the truth. There's a lot of controversy surrounding it right now. There are still copies. Get it while you can.
So there we go. I did my spiel. There we go. Yay.
Great point to point out. And I think Andy would second that as well. That yes. If there's
by now.
Right, Phil Eklund games are tough to find. So if you have any intention of playing John Company, of owning John Company, now is the time to act. There's a lot of drama surrounding that you can look up on your own. But just know that Game Surplus right now has it in stock. Probably not for long though, because listeners of Good, the Bored, the Ugly, if that's in your wheelhouse, now's the time to pick it up.
Yeah, don't wait. You're not going to find it at that price that good for that long.
For sure. All right, let's go ahead and kick things off with Trent because that'll give him a chance to rest his voice before he actually kicks into his top 10. First, we're going to review games, then we'll talk Trent's top 10. Then on the way out the door, we hype some things that we're looking forward to. Games, or in my case, it's not going to be a game at all. It's going to be a gigantic question mark where I'm just scratching my head. Anyway, more on that to come. First,
I'll scratch your head.
I don't know. It sounds a little invasive, TC. I'm not. I don't think so, man. I don't.
Oh,
think
really?
So.
That bothers you? Okay, cool.
I like scratching my own head. I don't know. I've never had anybody else scratch my head, and I guess it's been a pleasant experience. I don't know if I've ever had that.
It could change. Could be a first time, Joe.
All right. Well, first we're going to hear from Trent because he had a weekend experience, a little weekend rendezvous with a different game group and an opportunity to play a game that is not yet released. So Trent, he's actually giving us a little bit of a first impression review on a game that you aren't going to be able to get and I'm not going to be able to get until it finally ships from Kickstarter. Take it from here, sir.
Okay. Last Friday night, I was in Minneapolis, and at the invite of an old friend of mine, I attended the first Minneapolis game night, which is kind of a wargaming group, but it's more of just a really heavy game group that meets at Source Comics and Games in Roseville, Minnesota, which is a suburb of Minneapolis. I showed up at the game night. There was about 40 to 50 people there, and there were all sorts of pretty heavy games being played. I saw multiple games of Age of Steam, Unhappy King Charles. Some people were playing High Frontier. There's just a lot of different heavy games going on all over the place. But the reason I went there is I got the opportunity to play the game Root, which is an upcoming game that was on Kickstarter a couple months ago. It's going to be published later this year by Leader Games. And the game was actually taught by Cole Worley, the designer of it. And I had the opportunity to play it with my wife and the friend I came up there to visit, Garth, and another person whose name I don't remember, but he just was like, hey, I'll join in. So he was our fourth person. Root is definitely like an area control mild war game with extremely, and I mean extremely, variable player powers. You're basically playing a different game as each character with a few rules that overlap. It's like on the order of vast type of very asymmetrical player powers. Like I said, you're literally playing almost the game in a different genre depending on the role you select at the start of the game. I was playing the Cats, which basically they start off with characters over the entire map. They already have if you imagine the board is like a map of a forest, and on each of the locations on the map, people can have troops. And the Cat faction, which is who I was, started off literally with troops in every single area on the entire map. I started off with a single troop everywhere. And my job was to, throughout the game, get as much control as many areas as possible. And I had a whole bunch of buildings I was supposed to build. And I did this by, the first thing it is, you started off with a sawmill. And the sawmill generates wood each time my turn comes up. And then I used that wood to build other buildings that did various things at each of the locations that I controlled. However, if other players manage to muster enough to go into a location and take it over from me, they can destroy my buildings. And honestly, you really need some of those buildings to win, because as you build them, they generate some victory points for you. And then they also generate the ability to put more and more troops on the board, and so on. The goal of the game is to get to 30 victory points, and every player has a different way of getting there, a very different way. But I get victory points by building buildings. I get some immediately upon building them. And I got some victory points for killing other people, which means I need to get lots of troops on the board because everybody's fighting me. If you're thinking in terms of a coin game, if you've ever played one of those, I was like the government faction. I started off with a huge amount of people on the board, and everybody's kind of teaming up somewhat to fight me. That's basically how it worked. So in that one, I'm like building buildings and things. My wife was playing a different faction that operated completely differently. She didn't start with very many people on the board. But in Root, everybody has a card. At the end of each round, you draw a card off of a shared deck. So it's a little tiny bit of a card-driven war game, but not really. Mostly the cards supplement effects that you can already do. You just go through a few phases on your turn, and that goes to the next player. And those cards supplement the things you're doing. What hers was she was very invested in the cards, and she was basically playing mechs versus minions. She was making a tableau of the cards and then had to go through them programmatically. And at each of the spots on it, she could stack similar cards so that she could do like a multiplicative effect of them. So if she would like stack 2 or 3 of them for the first phase, so like her turn had 4 phases, and she was programming what she would actually do during each of those phases. So if she ended up with a bunch of stacks for the first phase, her first phase would be amazing. And that's what she was doing. So she kind of had the thing where if she was smart, she would kind of almost become inevitable and unstoppable. But the other players had the capacity to kind of shortchange her and make her lose a bunch of her cards, and she'd almost have to start from scratch. So she had that going on. Another player, this is my mutual friend, he was basically selling stuff to everybody. He was selling the cards in his hands. He was selling everything to everybody. Every resource that you could possibly have in this game. His dudes on the map he could put up for sale to other players. Anything that was for sale, you could buy them from him with your excess troops that weren't on the board. If you gave him your excess troops, you could buy that stuff from him until, like, you could borrow his troops until the end of the round, or literally buy cards out of his hand. But the thing is, once he had those troops, they became like ones he could immediately use for his own engine. You were like giving him money, and he needed money to win. So he's like trying to sell you stuff so that you'll use your excess troops to buy from him. So he's like playing like a negotiation sales type game. The other guy is doing something, I don't even remember what he was doing. Something else completely different that involved him only having like a few troops. And he was like basically making locations on the board so that you had to bribe him to go there. You had to like pay him stuff in order to go to the locations that he had basically converted to his... He was like, became a friend of the people there. And once he had done that, he put a token on there. And then to go there, you had to give him stuff. So we're all playing very different things that we're doing on the map. Very, very different. But in the end, it is kind of a war game. You're moving dudes around in your map. That's one of the actions you can do. And the combat is a very simple dice rolling thing that's... basically, the way it works is both players roll a d4. The attacker chooses the higher of the two. And that's how many hits they do. And the non-attacker chooses the lower of the two. And that's how many hits they do. And that's the combat for the game. So it's really straightforward, very simple combat. There's a bunch of ways to mitigate it. And the fourth guy's faction, literally, if he was the defender, he got to choose the high die. That was his big advantage. So it was almost impossible to fight him. So the whole game encourages you to be very offensive and fighting. And everybody has a unique way of generating victory points. And it's just so asymmetric. To me, in the end, the way this game felt is if you've ever played Vast, the Crystal Caverns, this is what I felt Vast should have been. Because there's actually a game here that's interesting.
Oh!
Yeah, shots fired.
Well, I was just going to ask how... I know I liked Vast, but that was such a bear to teach. Is this easier to teach people to play?
Well, the basic flow of a turn is same for each person. Every turn always has 3 phases in it. I don't remember what they're called, but no matter what faction you always have these 3 phases. It's just the phases work a little differently for each player depending on what their specific faction is. So it's very asymmetric because they work very differently, but each faction's pretty straightforward to teach. The boards themselves really explain the game really well. And the shared game part's a pretty straightforward, simple war and area control game. It's not real complicated. I would say one of the players at the table had never played anything much like it, and Cole was able to have us all playing in probably 20 minutes. Probably we were starting to play. I felt like it was probably a little easier to teach than Vast, probably, I would say, and it was a much better game.
Sounds like it wasn't quite as asymmetric, though. You know, the system, it sounds like being similar for all players helps, because in Vast, it's every player has every phase being unique. You know, nobody has like even remotely the same heuristics that they're using. It's just, I don't know. It's something that everything kind of leans on itself in Vast, but nothing in any way mimics anything else.
Yeah, these are you're kind of having the same turn structure every round, no matter what faction you are. They just play so differently. Like you're using the cards differently, and then actions available to you are different, and they definitely shape how confrontational you can be. And I want to jump back to the cards that you have, the shared deck that everybody's drawn off of. I think that idea, I mean, it's a little bit of a card-driven wargame, but what's interesting about these cards is they're very multi-use. Some of them, literally, you play during your turn as like a fast effect for like an ambush type effect or something like that. But a lot of them you can build for a permanent special ability for yourself. And each faction has a different way of building them. Like with mine, I have to... the best way... I'm trying to think of how to describe it because I can't really teach it. But, okay, so on the board, there's 3 different types of locations, right? There's one that's, I think, represented by mice, one of them that's represented by foxes, and one of them that's represented by turtles or something. I don't remember the third one. But they're all represented by animals. There's like maybe 6 or 8 of each. And the way most of the factions that I saw build things is, on the card, there's a little depiction, depict 2 foxes on it down in the corner. If it gets to the build phase of your round and you control 2 fox locations, you just build the card. Boom. And that's... You've used the 2 fox locations for your round, so you can't use the foxes to build anymore. But once you build it, it's on the table. It's a permanent ability for you for the rest of the game. I remember one I exploited like crazy I ended up with the ability, I get a free attack at the start of each of my rounds. And so if I was ever in a location with someone else, I just got to attack them for free. Usually it took me an action to do an attack. There was all kinds of crazy stuff. Some of them are literally alternate. That's
why everybody wanted to punch you in the face.
Yeah. Especially my wife. My wife and I, believe it or not,
immediately. It doesn't even take that to make you and your wife just go for each other.
We do.
Totally play a 3-player game. I'll be the third wheel in the game with Trent and his wife because it means I'm going to win every time.
Yeah, you're the type of person who as long as you sit those 2 up against each other is pretty much a guaranteed win for someone else. Yeah. I know a few gaming couples I pull that trick off on.
Yeah. But the cards you build have a wide variety. Some of them are literally alternate victory conditions. Some of them are like control 4 fox locations and you win the game.
This sounds like a really wide design space here that Cole.
It is. There's all kinds of stuff going on. He showed it. We played with 4 factions, and he showed us at least 4 more that I saw, and they were all just way different from how they operate. Yeah.
They added a crap ton in that Kickstarter campaign. Well, I'll look forward to getting that, man. Thanks for going into that depth there, helping us know what decisions you're making. What's that?
Did you play with the first Minnesota Historical Wargame Society?
Yes.
You lucky dog. I've been wanting to meet up with those guys for years. Like
that's
all
exactly what I played with.
Yeah, that's they get like all the GMT prototypes and they like play test all the really crazy stuff. So that sounds really cool, Trent. I'm envious. I'm very envious.
I'm gonna put it this way, and I will say this without a doubt. If I lived in the Minneapolis area, that would be my game night.
I'd be there too.
I would make Fridays be my game. I've already told my wife this. I was like, you'd have to deal with the fact that Fridays are now my game night.
Dude, it's kind of nice though. If you're going on vacation, that's really nice to be able to head up there though, because almost always I feel like game nights are, like weeknights where you can't be going anywhere. So that way people can make it more often that are locals. But this sounds like a great game night to go visit.
Yes. If you were in Minneapolis on a Friday night and you enjoy playing remotely heavy games, go to the Source in Roseville. I'm telling you. That's worth your time.
Very cool stuff. All right. Well, thanks very much, Trent. That was Root, a first impression of that upcoming game that was kickstarted and is coming to you from Leader Games and designer Cole Worley. Now we're going to hear from Andy, who did a 2-player variant on a new 18xx game that's been quite... polarizing, I would say, in the 18xx community. Andy?
That's what I hear. I don't get it. Anyway.
Okay.
But yeah, so we tried 18CZ since Trent was gone. I was on spring break, and we didn't really have anyone but me and the elusive Nate, who was a train gamer at the time. We thought, well, we really want to play a trade game, so 18CZ is supposed to have a really cool 2-player variant. So we did play that, and I have to say, yeah, it's a pretty good 2-player variant. So the way they do this is you have this sort of AI player in a way who will start their in an 18 small, medium, and large companies. Well, when it comes time for it to start a company, it will immediately pick a random company and then automatically gain a train for that company. and it will run. And what they do is they have different ways this alternates, but basically whoever is priority dealer or the first player in the stock round, they lay the track for the small company and the large company. The second player lays the tokens for the small company and the large company. Then conversely, when the medium company comes in, the second player lays the track for that, and priority player lays the token for that. So you get to use these companies kind of as a way to either A, to help yourself, or B, screw somebody over. So you can be like, hey, that AI, that company is attached to your company. Oh, if I have him token there, that screws you. Okay, he's there. Or other things. Or what happened is we ended up in this sort of like passive aggressive situation with the companies where I'd be the priority dealer and I would look at the large company and be like, I can't do any track upgrades that don't also help you. Okay, I'm not laying track.
Nice.
Just things. Well, and I figured out another odd little thing you could do, which helped me out, because whenever the AI person, like I said, starts, it automatically gets a train. So in the initial rounds, what I ended up doing was starting my own company, but I had enough left over that I actually bought the shares of the AI player, and the AI player will only ever have one train per company. So for a lot of money, but they will never, like in sex games, you have to run companies before you buy trains. So in almost all of these, your stock price drops one in your first operating round so you can get your train and get going. Well, the AI player starts with a train. Like his will never fall back. And so I bought up the 2 shares of his small company. Next round, sold them both off, made $20 on it.
So why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't I do that? No, it was a really good idea. And anyway, it's just neat like that. So even it's a small enough map, and you kind of do things with this third AI sort of player to where it doesn't feel like 2 players. Like you are definitely rubbing some knees and elbows there. Like you're still getting in each other's faces with tokening and track lays and upgrades. And the other thing is the AI player does a brutal train rush, because what happens is in 18CZ, usually after so many operating rounds, you have to chuck a train. They call it like a foreign investor situation. But what happens is the AI player automatically at the end of the set of operating rounds buys a new train for each of his companies, and he has infinite money, so he can always do that. So in the last few rounds of the game, he is blowing through 4 trains every operating rounds when you're down to like 2 of this train and 2 of that train. And I think we made a mistake when we started one of his companies, or like he would have just completely like Nate and I, if we had done him right, I think would have literally in the last set of operating rounds be forced buying trains. Like he would have rusted us out. So it was really weird because on the setup, like they're like, no, use the whole train deck. I'm like, what, really? But you're playing with only 2 people. Why would you use the whole train deck? I found out why you use the whole train. Oh my God. Like if you're not playing the train rush on this game and you think you have it easy, that AI player will rust those trains out from no time. So anyway, the games I played that are 2 players for 18xx that are supposed to be good are 18CZ, 1860, and 18OE. I'd say 18CZ far and away blows them out of the water as a 2-player experience. This is going forward going to be, if I have 2 train gamers, to me and another train gamer, and we want to do 18xx and nobody else does, 18CZ 2-player, no question.
the short little transition here before Andy turns into a wargamer, in which case 2 players is all he needs.
Yeah.
No, I've heard this is the way to go if you're playing 2-player 18xx from quite a few people.
No, it does, because the problem with so many like 18xx player is if the 2 people just keep farting around. There's the poodles. But if the 2 people keep farting around, like, the game can stall out and be slow because the trains aren't getting bought. No, this game, oh dear God, if you don't train rush, the AI player will train rush you. You better be on top of it.
Euro was asking about there's a 2-player variant for 1846 on the forums. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I'd known about it. It's actually in my 1846 box, but I haven't had a chance to try it yet.
Okay, you got sidetracked with 18CZ, and it's much better. Okay, got it. Check.
Yeah, I've heard it's good though. I've train gamers who I respect the opinion of have said that no, it's a very good variant, and I think it was officially done by the designer too. So it's not like quite a fan made thing either.
Cool. I'll have to keep that in mind, because one of the biggest stumbling blocks I have getting 1846 to the table is that we need at least 3 people.
Yeah, exactly. But no, this one was a strong 2-player game. Really good.
Cool stuff. All right. Well, yeah, TC, this one sounds like one that you'd be able to play maybe, with the 2 of you, with you and Carissa, because in the past, I think you've gotten her onto 18xx games a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. She did.
Okay.
Once she realized it wasn't a war game, she was okay with it.
All right. Well,
it's a war of business.
Yeah. Well, I told you my story where I bought it. It's like, oh, I got this new GMT game. It's 1846, and Carissa's like, oh, what war happened there? I said, it's not. It's a train game. So you could just see the air go. But after we broke it out, she enjoyed it. It was good.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, cool. Thanks, Andy. Thanks for letting me know about that one. 18CZ, and that sounds like it is the 2-player go-to for Andy now in the 18xx world. So I'm going to go ahead and get my review going here, because I think Trent might have a little bit to chime in. I know he's played this one. Maybe TC, I'm not sure if you've had a chance to try it, but it is kind of the recent, like, sort of heavy brain buster that's firmly a Euro game, but is making a lot of people scratch their head and maybe scratch their friends' heads as well. I don't know. Some people are into that. So I'm talking about Agra. Agra is a game based on the city of Agra in India. And basically what you're going to be doing is utilizing a fairly simple worker placement system to create goods and then upgrade those goods, use them to fulfill recipes in different guilds and in different for different notables, which are what they call the people that are sort of these recipe cards that then give you special abilities when you fulfill their orders. You're going to be doing this until you reach certain end game conditions, which you add up your victory points. So, everything so far sounds like a Euro. Now, what is it that distinguishes Agra? Well, I told you it's a simple worker placement system. On your turn, you get a main action, which is either you're going to produce or convert goods, or there's only 4 places you can go to that are not considered goods production. There's like 4 different helpers, I guess you'd call them, 4 different actions you can take. One of which would be to construct new buildings, which that you can then later on use. One of which is to specifically focus on delivering your goods. One of them is to trade goods, so you can convert without necessarily using the board conversion. And then the last one is just kind of to help you as auxiliary actions, what I would call them. So these 4 different actions plus the ability to produce goods all seems very simple. But what's really tough is that in Euro games, a lot of times you like to set up a specific system and then continue to run it maybe cyclically. So you'd go here because you've got a special ability that makes it so that when you go here, you get to get double efficiency on it. And then you're going to get all these resources, and you're going to try to leverage that bonus and large quantity, that surplus of resources, to get you some sort of a benefit to make it better for you and playing the game. The thing is, though, in Agra, you are trying to get the most coins, which are points, but every time you want to use an action that you were basically the last person to use, if nobody else has used your action and you want to use it again, you have to pay 2 points. And end game scores in this game are not super high. They're not like, you're not talking hundreds of points. Usually the winner's got like maybe bordering close to 100, but that seems still really high. In our game, winning scores were like around 70s and 80s. So, 2 points every single turn is a lot to pay to take an action again. So you got to consider, in an efficiency game, when you're getting penalized for using an action before another player has used it, it makes you really think outside of the box and be creative. So that's very interesting. Every time that you boot other players, you're going to be giving them back the ability to use that action. But then if they have workers, if on your turn you have workers that are still left that you haven't previously had available and used this ability, they call them like laying workers down. So you're going to first put workers on the map standing up. On your turn, your main action is simple, but what really makes Agra what I would call like just a brain knot, just tying your brain in a knot, a brain pretzel, is that the extra free actions you can do on your turn are really the heart of the game. What I would say is, it's really important to be using these actions because you can get yourself like the ability to impact the board state in several different ways as opposed to taking a single action and doing that a lot, which is generally what your main action allows you to do. I don't know if any of this makes sense, but like you're taking actions, but the main thing that you're doing is like your secondary actions. I feel like that's really how you play the game well. And that results in the system of Agra being extremely difficult, because the inherent inefficiency of using an action space before another player has used it since you last used it, that inherent wrench in any plans makes it so that I have to continually reassess any plan I'm making in this game. And all the different bonus actions and the way that I really make the best turn is a huge puzzle that happens every turn and makes it so there's a ton more decisions and just a much larger decision tree of possibilities than I would expect in a normal, simple, worker placement, you put out a worker game. So if all those things sound interesting to you, the simple recipe fulfillment is definitely resting on an extremely solid foundation of a worker placement game that I highly recommend checking out if you're into heavy Euros. Now, it is difficult to learn this from the rulebook. The rulebook itself doesn't really give you that great of an idea of how different game systems work. I actually specifically relied on one of our listeners that's here in our chat right now. Murr had an interpretation of a rule that I could not wrap my head around, and I searched on the forums before I played this for the first time, and it was his reading of the rule book and his way of understanding it that really made sense to me. So thanks to Murr and to everybody who's helping out on these forums on Board Game Geek, because Agra is a difficult game. Also it's worth mentioning that this game feels like it's been hugely overproduced. It is the only time I've ever seen a Euro game use a board that's the size of like Twilight Struggles, a fourfold board, not a fourfold, but whatever it is, like where it's got 8 different little sections that all fold out. I'm used to the two, to having a bifold board and a board that has 4 sections and a board that has 6, but a board that has 8 is like, that's overdoing it in a lot of cases. Not in Twilight Struggle. That map is huge and has a lot of information contained. In Agra, it's just overproduced. And the artwork and the way that the board is set up is a function. It is a form over function situation where it is difficult to read, even though it is huge and way overproduced. It's still difficult to tell what's what. So if that gives you an idea, it's going to be difficult to learn, but I do think it's worth sinking your teeth into. Agra has a cool system of adding replayability where these notables will change vastly from each game and give you these truly impactful game-altering special abilities and actions and auxiliary things that no other player can do, and systems of earning like kind of alternate victory points generating systems. It's just a really interesting system, and I got a chance to play this one with Trent. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you, Trent. What do you think about Agra?
It felt like a Battle Sorta game. That's was my complete reaction to playing it. It actually, more than anything, reminded me of the Gallerist, and I think it's because of the sense that there's 4 main action spots, and there's reasons to bump other players off. Like, your worker doesn't stay there, it gets bumped off by other players, and you kind of want your worker to stay around, and you kind of don't. I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do. And there really aren't that many decisions on a given turn as to what you can do with your workers, but there's so much, like, it's kind of opaque as to what's going to happen. You have to really start thinking several turns ahead. You have to, or you probably won't even be able to produce any victory points at all if you're not thinking at least a few turns ahead. And it's so much affected by which of your workers get bumped and which ones don't. And I really enjoyed that. I thought it was fantastic. Has a potential to be one of my favorite worker placement games if I got to play it several times. I'm very much looking forward to replaying it. It definitely passed my quote morning after test, where I think a game is pretty good and has potential if I'm thinking about it the next day after playing it. And Agra definitely passed that test. I thoroughly liked it.
Wow, it does look like a table hog. I'm just looking at pictures of this thing. Holy cow!
They even did something where like one of the boards is like angled, and so
yeah,
all
it's like a stage.
It's hilarious. Yeah, all the pieces like have one side that's flat and one side that's like angled, and it kind of gives the game a really like uneven look to it. It almost looks like it was unintentional, but it's so that they can both be put out on the board because they're going to be out on the board a lot and on that thing, that like angled board.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it Amazon. And it says Capstone Games. Are they going to reprint this or?
I wouldn't be surprised. It actually does feel kind of like something that Clay would definitely be able to
and
do.
I know Capstone is like kind of doing what Stronghold does. He's starting to make deals like to be the American distributor of X game.
Yeah, Quined. Well, Quined, he did that. Quined was Haspel Connect, and he handled that one. So it sounds like he's got Spielworks, and then Spielworks, had the Haspel Connect that went through Quined, and I think those are kind of the two that you're seeing him pick up quite a bit. Though Hentes, or however you say it, definitely went with Tasty Minstrel. So I don't know. I know.
Well, if Capstone does a reprint on this, and you
Quined, I think,
and you say there's issues understanding the rule book, that might be a good thing because every Capstone game I ever played had a pretty concise rule book.
Yeah.
Pretty decent.
There's
yeah,
also
a little bit of struggle. I think there was a few things that felt like they may have been, they weren't extremely clear in the first rule book, but I know that it was a better experience than what I heard that the first version of the rule was.
Mm.
Yeah, and I ended up actually winning a copy of this, and in mine they actually have a pretty clear and concise teaching guide you can download off of B. Like just basically it's like, read this, here's how to teach this game in a way that's not ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I threw that in my copy pretty quickly. And then they have a player aid that I wouldn't say is organized well, but it's as far as each spot tells you pretty clearly what you can do with it.
Sure. Yeah, with Agra, it could use, a lot of the things are there, but it just, that rule book is one of those where you get done and yes, it teaches you the rules, but you still don't know how to play. So it's
and I think the board's like that too. Like the way it parcels out information is not clear.
No. And then even like, I think it's hilarious. Like on the back side of the board, they have the exact same artwork minus all of the game, the things that let you play the game. So, you can just, once you're that good, you can just, remember that this is the building on, in the city of Agra that apparently has all of the production of curry. So,
well, yeah. And the other thing I'm trying, and I don't really mean this as a diss on it, but I was looking up the rate or the heaviness rating on BGG, and it puts it really up there, like at a 4.2 or somewhere between a 4.2 and a 4.5. And I'm just sitting there going, there's something about it when I've played it that doesn't make me think it's that heavy. And I wonder how much the issues with like the board's information getting to you is making it feel harder than it really is. And I'm not saying it's a light or medium game by any stretch of the means, but like High Frontier has heaviness ratings in that range. And I wouldn't say it's as hard as High Frontier.
I don't know. Yeah, the second game was a lot better. Like in terms of like just the first game was very difficult. Very much felt like a slog to just get from point A to point B. But when I taught it the second time, that was when Trent was in it, and I'd almost forgot there, Andy. I think I've kind of blocked from my mind that first game took us like 4.5, 5 hours, and the game is supposed to be like 30 minutes a player. It was just like it was that tough. And that second game that we played was a lot more like, I mean, it took me a long time to teach it because everything involves a system, which, like Trent said, kind of reminds me of Vital Lacerda games.
Oh, yeah, no, I would say that. I'm just questioning if it's like how much the difficulty of figuring out the information from the board and all of that, if that plays a role in making people think it's heavier than it really is, or is it really that heavy? But I would need to play it more to figure that out for me.
I think I agree with you, Andy, but I also think that's the case with a lot of heavy games, is that it's not that they're that heavy, it's that they didn't get developed, as much as, or in a direction that they could have gone that would have made it a lot more intuitive and just feel like, like it's not difficult to grasp these systems. Though with Agra, I don't know, aside from cleaning up the visual design, the graphic design of the board to make it more clear and less pretty, aside from that, I don't know how you would fix this to make it, to make the game system be more intuitive, because it seems to me like everything is fairly intentional. It's just, it's just the way that the game teaches you from the rule book that's tough.
Right. I don't know. And that's kind of why I want to play it more before I decide fully which way I'm going. It's one of those thoughts that were in my mind I had about
4.3 or 4.5 is super, super high. I agree. Like, I mean, that's like, that's something different. And yeah, I don't know if it's that high.
Right.
All right. Well, that was my review of Agra. And thanks, Andy. Thanks, Trent, for sharing your thoughts on that one. And now we're going to hear from TC, who...
No. I was looking at the show notes. Apparently, I submitted mine too late. What you put for review is actually going to be my hype. What you put for my hype, I'm really interested in because I love Pacific Rim. I'll look into that. That'll be my homework. I'll look into that after I see the movie, the sequel on Friday, because me and Kate, that's like one of our favorite movies ever is Pacific Rim. It's not good. It sure is a heck of a lot of fun. But the game I want to review is a game you guys recommended, and it's my first very small steps to maybe enjoying a Splotter game, and that is Pandemic Rising Tide.
Mm-hmm.
I got a chance to play that this weekend, and wow, that's a good one. And what really threw this one over first of all, I'll describe it a little bit. It's pandemic, but instead of diseases, you've got water going everywhere in, I don't know where, Norway, Netherlands. I don't know. I couldn't even pronounce the names of the region. I'd had to look at the picture. But so the water's rising and it's flooding the land, and you got to build dikes and get the water out. And to win the game on the basic game, you got to build, 4 pumps? But we tried the meat of this game, and I think where this game really shines is in that population variant, where you have 4 different winning conditions you have to meet to win the game, and it changes from game to game, and you have to deal with population on top of everything else that's going disastrously wrong in this game. That was really enjoyable. I played with a guy who is like a big Pandemic fan, and he really enjoyed it. He almost enjoyed it more than Pandemic Legacy. It did a lot of things differently. I thought that Pandemic really needed to break out of the rut it's in to do things. And it's good, guys. I mean, you guys hit the mark on this one. It's a really good game. And I don't know what else to say about it. Have you tried it with the population variant?
I still haven't.
Really? How about you, Trent?
Trent, did you give it a chance? Didn't hear that there.
Yeah, I haven't done it with the population variant.
Oh, those orange cubes make it so good, guys. Because once the water will actually displace population if it gets too high, and it goes on this card. And if this card fills up, that's another loss condition. So it's like one more gear in this whole mess of things that can chain react and just cause the game to explode in your face, or flood, or drown, I guess would be more appropriate for this one.
Oh, yeah, you can go from like no water on the board to losing the game.
And it's that flood action, right? Yeah. So if 3 cubes will go to Q, and the 2 will go to 1, and the water and the seas are rising. And Andy, man, I was just playing this game going, this would be such a great game to teach about climate change.
Or the problems of building on land that's below sea level.
Yeah, because like one of the pumps actually pumps out water to make it a land, but then it causes all sorts of issues. This is good, and this is and in terms of pandemic games, I think this is definitely a top 5. It blows away Cthulhu Pandemic. I like Iberia quite a bit, and I thought it was better than Iberia. It's good, guys. Try it with I'm telling you, try it with the population variant. You'll blow your brain to pieces. Your brain will melt. It's like Spirit Island melt stuff. It's good.
Yeah, for sure. It's really cool to see them approaching other subject matter with the pandemic system and somehow making it feel like both evocative of the new, flooding mechanism, the new rising sea, while still feeling like a pandemic game.
Yeah.
With the deck sort of being what determines how things come out. It gives you that ability to see what's coming up, and it also builds that suspense where it's like, I know this card's in the deck somewhere.
Yeah.
Let's hope it's not in the top 3.
And what's really crazy is we look through the deck where the areas flood. There are 2 copies of every land mass in that game, and that just cranks that thing up like tremendously because you're like, it hit. Oh crap! It hit again. So yeah, nice. And beautiful board design, wonderful components. The rule book was clear and concise. And I think it's only like $45 or $50. It's a great deal.
Oh yeah, it's the most replayable pandemic I think there's ever been. Like in terms of how much each game changes based on those, the end game goals. I think it's the most replayable pandemic there is. Think about it, man. There's like, even if you're just playing on intro level difficulty, there's 12 different possible tasks for you to fulfill. And, as soon as you so that's like what, 12 times 11 times 10 times 9. That's how many different pandemic games you can play. Obviously, they're not all that different, but I'm really excited to try those population cubes. Which sounds like, TC, you're extremely positive.
Oh, yeah, it's really positive. And if you like, it's great because if you're familiar with Pandemic, it just adds, it has the same base as Pandemic, but it does things differently, which is really cool to see. So, yeah, I'm really curious to hear what you guys think about that population variant. And Joe, I just want to say the little Dyke boy came out with his finger in the wall.
The little Dutch boy.
And I thought of you immediately. I'm like, hey, Joe, I found the Joe card, guys. Look, it's the Joe card.
He drowned, man. He drowned. We watched that dude. We saw him come out of the deck. We were like, oh, we're going to get this. There's no way that we can lose now. And then, boom, we still lost, even with the Dutch boy plugging the Dyke at our worst at our worst spot. So it was rough. It was a close game, and it's just crazy how how well balanced they have it.
I also like the water pumps. That was pretty cool. You put like the token on top of the cards before you draw to remember each pump station pumps water out. Yep. That was pretty. We called that the feel good action. When things going bad, at least something, you have this good action that's going to help you out a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Oh boy, I love that one. So yeah, we're gonna definitely keep bringing it around in my game box. Hopefully, seeing it'll get played more. I think it's a great one easy to learn. Not anything more heavy, so to say, than regular Pandemic, but just a very different feel, very different system. Highly recommended from me as well, TC. Well, that brings us to the end of the review section, and now the moment that we have been advertising and teasing, and I'm pumped to hear exactly what order these are coming out in. I'm pumped to hear what is going to fill in the gaps between the games that we have heard about and the games we haven't heard about. I'm, of course, talking about Trent's top 10 games. So, Trent, do you have any... I was giving Trent some crap here at our game night before. I was saying, he said he had it down to 11, and he said he was, going to not mention his honorable mention, because he knew he was going to get crap from the group. So, Trent, do you have anything to say before we start your number 10?
Nope, I just have a brief intro. So I want to start off by saying that this list takes into account the fact that I've been playing I would describe as gamer games since the mid-1980s. This is a lifetime thing for me, and I tried very hard to incorporate that into this list. So what that meant is a lot of the games, as I was whittling this down, I eliminated a lot of games because they were too new. I didn't want to include anything that was extremely recent because, for me, a game that's come out in the last year has got to be... it really can't make this list. That's not even remotely fair compared to, a 30 to 35 years of gaming history. I mean, I can't really say that that's my number 5 game of all time when I've been playing games consistently for 35 years. So It just doesn't work. So I also thought about games that I really have enjoyed playing over the years, but I'm not so much excited to play anymore. And I really didn't want to include any of those either. So for me, it came down to, I first played it, quote, a long time ago. And by that, I mean more than a year or two at least. My first play of it has to go back into the past at least a little ways. I played it a lot of times, and I'm still super excited to see it on the table again.
Number 10.
Okay, number 10.
I have no predictions on this one, Trent. I have no idea where we're gonna go.
Were you telling me that this was going to be your number 10? I thought that I was inserting in something that was right before you're going to say it.
Nope, I'm not. I'm pretty much there. Let's do it. Number 10.
You're there, dude. There. Trent.
Okay, my number 10 is Acquire. Acquire is one of the ones I mentioned on Twitter that's being 50 years old or more.
Plastic. Mm-hmm.
What? The plastic?
The classic.
Oh, I thought you said the plastic.
You want the...
I have the 1999 Avalon Hill version with the gigantic, ridiculously huge plastic buildings, so I thought maybe you were referring to that.
The preferred version, from what I understand.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Acquire was first published in 1962 by 3M and is now published by Hasbro. The really nice 1999 edition I'm referring to has been out of print for a long time, sadly, but the newest edition is kind of like a smaller version of it. It's still nice. It was designed by Sid Saxon. Acquire is a stock collection game, but it's got this weird mechanism where the board is abstract, is the best way I can say it. My wife and I like to think of it as being an abstract, quote, business environment. Essentially what you do is you have these tiles. The board is like a grid of like 1 through 10 and A through H. I don't remember the exact dimensions on the version that I have, but it's like that. And all the tiles will say like 1H and 3A. And on your turn, you have a handful of them like Scrabble. You have 6 of them and you add one of them out there. And then when areas get big enough, they just become corporations. And then eventually the corporations, are made up of sets of contiguous tiles. And eventually they touch each other and they go through a merger thing.
And they become people.
Yeah, the merger process can be nasty. You want to be on the right side of it. If you're not on the right side of it and you're coming to get subsumed and you don't get a whole lot of value out of it, it's a regretful thing for you. So a lot of this is like timing and planning, and there's a lot of that going on. For me, this is the game that really introduced me to, quote, gamers games around 1986 or so. My neighbor had a copy of it in her closet, and I thought it looked kind of neat because it was the old 3M version. It had a green box with like a dude sitting on the front that looked all like intimidating,
like Mad Men, kind of.
It was kind of a Mad Men vibe, yeah. And I was like, "This looks neat. Let's play this." And I'm like, I'm like 8 or 9 at the time or something. And she's like, "Okay." She was game for that. She always was. And so I played it with her and her nephew, I think it was. As we started playing that consistently, and then we started getting all kinds of other games. But that was the one that really hooked me, was Acquire. And it's a game I've always deeply enjoyed. In fact, it was in about 1999 that I first really walked into a hobby gaming store and was looking for board games because I was looking for a copy of Acquire. And that's where I got my nice deluxe version that I have now, because that neighbor had moved on and I didn't have a chance to play it anymore, and I wanted to get my own copy. And I distinctly remember walking into an unfamiliar store looking for Acquire. It's a very vivid memory. So it's been around for me for a long time, and I think it deserves a place in this list. It's a very nice intro economic game. If you want an intro to stock games, that's a good one to do, because it's mean, which is you'll start to see as a theme on this list. And yeah, Acquire's my number 10. So we'll keep going here.
First I want to say that Acquire is like a cornerstone game. That if you're into economic games and you have not played Acquire, you have a very large hole to fill in your gaming collection. That's almost a must to play. I really enjoy Acquire quite a bit.
I agree with Trent. I recommend it as like your first economic game, but I still think that it continues to be relevant even once you've played other heavier ones.
Yeah, Sid Saxon is a genius.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, he's so ahead of his time. Visionary. So this is probably one of those games that Andy's going to play now that he's already played Dominion.
Yeah, I was about to type. I'm like, I don't recommend people start their economic gaming with my method. because like I was like, economic engine. What do we get? Oh, 18OE. That looks fun. Let's do that.
That looks like a nice light intro game.
Yeah.
Acquire has a lot of the same meanness, but can be played in about an hour.
Yeah.
So-
Well, I went from Catan to Mage Knight, so most people should not follow the path I took.
No, sure not. Start with Acquire. And that's number 10. So now, number 9.
My number 9 game is Indonesia. It's designed by Jeroen Douwman and Joris Weersigna, I believe is the pronunciation of his last name.
Jeroen and Joris.
Jeroen and Joris. We'll stick with that.
Yep.
Okay, so it was originally published in 2005 by Splotter. I had the 2005 edition for a while, and then I had a situation with water damage, and I lost my copy, and then I got one of the newer ones. Yeah.
With the gigantic pieces.
Yes. That's the one I currently have now, but they really don't bother me, and I'm fine with them. Indonesia is an economic engine building game where you launch shipping and production companies in order to deliver goods to markets in Indonesia. The board is a giant map of Indonesia. You're setting up companies on the board, and you're setting up ways to ship to those various companies. You're setting up shipping companies as well. There's a lot of company interplay. I don't really want to get into rules because honestly, I find rules explanations boring on podcasts. Let's just say that you're setting up an economic engine and merging companies and things like that. As Joe mentioned, the current edition has some weird component issues, but it's nothing that really stands in the way of gameplay. It just is kind of weird. There's really overly large wooden pieces that aren't necessarily large. It is what it is. But the game itself is amazing. Every single time I play this game, I immediately want to play it again. This has never not been true for any time I've ever played Indonesia. I would have been perfectly happy to immediately set up and play the game again. And this is like a 3-hour game.
Yeah.
So that says everything you need to know. I've played it with tons of different people now. I don't even want to guess how many times. It's far and away my most played Splotter game. It's far and away my favorite Splotter game. I don't even think there's anything else that even comes close to it. It just, for me, it nails that magic point of engine building and vicious player interaction, which I really love. You get to build your engine, you get to build your set of companies that are running along, you can snipe companies from other people. It's got engine building and meanness, and I really love it. And it's just hands down my favorite Splotter game, and obviously my number 9 of all time.
That's interesting that this is your favorite Splotter game. I don't know if I knew specifically how fond you were of it, but I understand it. And I mean, you share this one with Andy, so as it being your top Splotter game. I really enjoy Indonesia as well. For me, it is, the sort of beautiful, elegant 18XX that never was. And that to me is really special. It's really cool that you can kind of occupy the same areas, and the way the shipping works, like you said, has some mean potential for it, but you kind of have to set yourself up for that. It's one that I really, really enjoy. Love the elegance of that, the way that you each get one upgrade a turn. Just a really, really cool system, one that I also really enjoy. Though it's not my top Splotter, I understand why you like it so much.
Hey, Trent, do you prefer to... This is a question for you. This usually... I always like asking this one. Do you prefer to play with your money open information or hidden information?
Open.
Okay. That was... every time I played it, there's always been like some big debate on whether it's open information or closed information, because I think in the rule book it says it's okay to do it either way. I'm like, oh, God, here comes a 30-minute argument.
I always prefer open information in games like that.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
There are rare exceptions, but most
theoretically
of the
trackable. You might as well track it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Andy,
Okay.
is your top Splotter?
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, word. Number 8.
Okay, number 8 is Modern Art. This is the game published by Cool Mini or Not that I was teasing on Twitter, because that's the current publisher. It's designed by Rainer Knizia and originally published in 1992 by Mayfair, which I also have that copy.
You still do?
I have 2 copies of Modern Art. That should tell you right there. I have one in our travel box that we leave in our camper for summer vacations. I have a copy of Modern Art because I just can't go on summer vacation without taking my copy of Modern Art. Okay, so Modern Art is an auction game where you are a modern art gallery and you're hoping to become wealthy by playing the art market through auctioning off paintings from your private collection and building a prestigious and valuable public collection. So you're going around the table, each player's got a card that depicts a particular painting. It's by one of 5 artists, and it has one of 5 auction types on it. So this has like hidden auctions where everybody reveals simultaneously. It has once around auctions, where basically you start with the player to your left and it comes back around to you. It has a fixed price where you set a price, and then the first start with the player to your left, and anyone can buy it for that price. And a completely open auction where it's like going once, going twice, sold to the highest bidder, and a doubling auction that enables you to basically auction off 2 paintings at once. The neat thing about this game is, and the thing that really made me fall in love with this is, when you put a painting up for auction, the other player's trying to decide how much it's going to be worth. Obviously, they're going to want to invest their money in a painting that's going to be worth more than they paid for it, right? Well, the kicker, and you've always got to think about this with modern art, is when you're buying that painting, that money is going to the person selling it. They keep the money. So that changes the economics of the game. You're giving them money, that the winner of the game is the person with the most money. You're like handing them victory points to take this painting. And that is the beauty of the game, because you've got to assess how much money they have. So for this one, you can do it open if you really want to be. But this one, I don't mind the money being hidden. I have played it with open, but I find the money being hidden makes people think a little bit more in this one, because it moves so quickly and the money is so fluid around the table that you kind of got to have a gut feeling as to who's doing well. And to me, this is just a beautiful, simple auction game. It's one that I'm pretty much happy to pull out with anyone. I played it with extremely beginning gamers. I played it with some cutthroat people that are like doing very complex calculations in their head. And I've almost always enjoyed it with any group that I've ever played it with. Like I said, this is in my box to take on family vacations, so I can play it with my 7-year-old, my 10-year-old, my 12-year-old, and my wife. And I've also played it with extremely heavy gamers before. And it's worked with all of them. It's just a really great auction game. Plus, the current version is gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful. The art is fantastic. And that's modern art. It's my favorite Reiner Knizia game. Highly, 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 highly recommended.
Right there with you, Trent. I think the best, you did a great job of explaining how wide of a swath this covers of people, anybody. I feel like everybody that plays board games is somewhere in the audience for modern art, because it's so quick, easy to teach, and it's so opaque in that it's based on player information that's kind of incomplete. It's just beautiful. I absolutely love it. I love how together you determine the value of the paintings. It's not only a critique on the modern art industry with the way that the studios sort of divine their own prices, but also how it's a great system that works in a very interesting way. So agreed that this is the best of Knizia's auction games. And I always historically have said that my favorite Knizia game is Lord of the Rings: The Confrontation, because it's just his most bizarre little game. But with the rise of modern art, I just am having a hard time deciding. It's such an excellent game. I understand why it's on here. I love this game as well.
Yeah, it's one of Knizia's top designs. This is definitely in my top 5 of his games. I still really, really like Tigris and Euphrates, but modern art is such a good little auction game, just for the reasons Trent said, where you're given, you have to determine the price you're going to give people. It's a lot of tension. It's a lot of fun.
For sure. Yeah. And it plays, like the fact that it goes up to 5 players and it plays 5 really, really well. I mean, just icing on the cake. So good stuff. Really love this one. And that was Trent's number 8. So numero 7.
Huh? What?
Go on.
Okay, I'm on number 7, and my number 7 is Agricola. Number 7 is published in 2007, originally in English by Z-Man Games. It's currently published today by Lookout Games. It's designed by Uwe Rosenberg, and it's kind of, I would say, almost the granddad. Not the first really great worker placement game, but in my opinion, one of the best. And I'm not going to say the best yet, because we're not to the top of my list. But it's such an amazing. It's one of the best worker placement games I've ever played. I'm not quite going to say the best, but it's extremely good. And the reason I like this one is because it's so tight. It's tight choices constantly, especially at 3 and 5 players. You can't waste actions in this game. You can't waste placements ever in this game. And the thing is, other players are going to take the spot you need. It is a given that this will happen. I mean, your plan that you have, this great vision of how you're going to be able to do everything you want, is not going to happen. It's going to get wrecked. You got to think of other ways to make at least some of your big vision happen, because This is a game where you got visions of a castle and you start laying the foundation and you start building a wall and then someone smashes that wall down. They're like, crap, how do I pick up the bricks and do something with what's left? And this happens over and over again, and you're just hoping that your people don't starve and you have some semblance of a farm near the end. Another thing that extends this game that I think is beautiful about it is the effective use of card decks in this game. There's a bunch of different decks for Agricola that you can use to make the game have a lot of variation. So in each game you have a hand of 7. You have 2 different hands of 7 cards that you can build throughout the game. They all depict different powers and abilities that you're going to get throughout the game. And the best way to play this, in my opinion, is to draft the cards so that you kind of have cards that have synergy together, which is great. That's fantastic, except you're not going to get to build all of them because other people are going to take the occupation spot, and you're just not going to get them, and you're going to be like, I hate you, and I hate you, and I hate you. And that, to me, that makes it fun. That is fun. I mean, and so to me, this is one of the best worker placement games I've ever played. It's one I will never ever turn down. I recently was going through my game collection and I came across a bunch of the Agricola decks, and I sat down and spent like an hour just looking at them, and I'm thinking, I want to play with these. I want to play with these. Can we get Agricola to the table? And it made me realize that it really belonged on this list. So I decided to slot it in at number 7, and that's Agricola.
Well, sir, this has been my top game previously, so that's what I will say about Agricola. Agree with you wholeheartedly. Perfect form of interaction. Well, I don't know, perfect. It's an interesting form that has lots of like hidden information in the form of the cards that drives this really fiercely competitive and tight board. So, to say why I think it's such a great form of interaction, that's it. Andy, this is like the only Euro game you still play.
I played Agra.
I know. I'm just giving you yes.
Now, it's one of the. I will say for this, it's one of the few Euro games that I would play at the drop of a hat, no question.
Yeah, and I understand why. All right, well, TC, on your to-do list.
I plead the 5th.
Well, that was Trent's number 7, and now number 6.
Here's where we start to have fun. My number 6 is Diplomacy. This one
6. I would have figured much higher.
Wow.
No. I'll explain why it's only number 6 in a minute. This one is one of the ones that skewed my game length average on this list high. I mentioned online that the average length of game on my list was 2.5 hours, and this is the reason that it's high. This was skewed high. This is also one of the more than 50 years old ones, because this was originally published in 1959 by Avalon Hill. It's today published by Hasbro. It was designed by Alan Colomer. And so Diplomacy is, the way I like to describe Diplomacy to people is, you ever played Risk? And people go, yeah, I played Risk. I said, imagine instead of like rolling dice for Risk, instead you write down what your move's going to be, and whoever moves the most troops into that area wins. And the other ones just die. And they sit there and they stare at me. And then I said, now let's imagine that you can go around with all the other 6 players playing and negotiate who's going to move where. And you're going to all just negotiate in private in little groups. And then they're like, that sounds like hell. And I'm like, it sounds amazing. So that's what this is. The reason I put this on my list and I always talk about it is because the pressure and emotional intensity of this game is just unparalleled. It's because this game is so based on alliances and negotiation, and the ease of betrayal in this game. It's just, you just write down other moves than you said you were going to, and there's no real consequence other than no one trusts you anymore. And so trust is, trust is a currency in this game. It really is. It's everything that happens in this game is negotiated between players, and it's that structure that's developed by those negotiations and this completely unstable foundation that makes this game incredible to me. Every single round is intense, especially after the first couple. Oh my word, when everybody's bordered up against each other and you know there are alliances forming and you're uncertain of them and you think you're in an alliance and you don't really know for sure, and you see 2 people talking that you don't want to see talking, it's fantastic. That's just a wonderful, there's no experience like it I've ever had in gaming. I honestly couldn't have included this on the list based totally on face-to-face play because I have not played it face-to-face enough to really warrant it. But I played it a lot online in forums. I played it on playdiplomacy.com. And it's those plays on total that have gotten it here. And I've got to say, more importantly than anything, this is not a game for everyone. They make a lot of jokes. They make a lot of jokes about diplomacy being like a friendship-ending game, and it can be if you go into the game not realizing that what is on the table stays on the table. You know, what happens in diplomacy stays in diplomacy.
Yeah,
you know, like what happens in Vegas.
My favorite story about it's still like the tournament they did. I think at a WBC or something, and a guy got betrayed and literally just like broke down crying in front of everyone at the convention hall.
Why did you betray me? You said. Oh yeah, you got to go into this game with like a turtle shell on, man, and be able just to hunker in it and take it. But man, every single game I played of this, I'm always the guy they turn. I was like, well, let's all turn on TC. He can take it. Okay, awesome.
All right, that was Trent's number 6 diplomacy, and now number 5.
Number 5 is Through the Ages: A New Story of Civilization, and this is the one that honestly probably made it on the list thanks to the app that's available for it. Yeah. And the reason for that is it's hard to get enough plays of this on the table with other players. I have a difficult time finding opponents that are willing to sit down and play this through on a regular basis. But thanks to the app, I've been able to solve that. The app for this on iPad, iPhone, I'm not sure whether it's Android or not, but
I think it is.
Okay, but it is an amazingly well done app for a heavy game. It's fantastic, and it's made me get a lot more plays of this end. Through the Ages was originally published in 2006 with a significant revision in 2015. It's designed by Vlaada Chvátil, published by Checkboard Games. It's a card-based civilization game where you're basically building more or less an engine, and it has a lot of player interaction, very deep player interaction. In fact, the revision, I think, actually took a little of the edge off of it because it was really vicious in the first version. And I don't think the newer revision takes off a little of the edge of that. It's not quite as bad. I'm not saying it's not bad. I'm saying it's not quite as bad. For me, this game works because of the thing it really sets us apart besides from the, hey, you can be mean to each other, which you're noticing is a theme in this list. This game really works because of the drafting mechanism. This is one of my favorite drafting mechanisms I've ever seen. You have this line of cards out there. They're all cards you need for your civilization. They're like leaders and wonders and technological growth and troops and things like that. All the things you need because, you need all these things. You need to protect your civilization. You need to generate more resources and all this stuff. All this stuff's laid out there in a row, represented on cards. The first chunk of the row requires 1 action for you to take it. A little bit further up, it takes 2 actions. A little bit further up from that, it takes 3 actions. And at the early on in the game, you only have 4 actions in your round, and you have a maximum of 4 cards that you can have in your hand. So you have to be, spending an action to play them and so on. But the thing is, each round as it goes around, you take cards out of that row and they slide down. So the ones that require 2 actions will slide down to the 1 action area. The ones with 3 actions will slide down to the 2. New cards will go into the 3 area. And each round, depending on the player count, 1, 2, or 3 of the cards at the front of the line will vanish. And so what this ends up meaning is, if there's a card you really, really want and you see it come up, you can always get it. It just may end up costing you a ton of actions. Or you can take the risk of, it'll come back to me, because you count it out and it's very likely the card will still be there when it comes back. But you're taking the huge risk that someone else might take it. And even more of a risk, they might be watching what you're doing and realizing you need that card and take it intentionally, which has happened to me quite often. So there's always that risk with the open drafting. It's that the way this does open drafting is just wonderful. And the way that the whole game centers around that. And that to me is just the compelling part of the game. This game takes 3 or 4 hours. There's a lot of rules to learn. I highly recommend the app. I really, really do. The app is fantastic. It's one of the best board game apps I've ever played, and it along with Twilight Struggle is probably the most played game I have on my devices. I highly, highly, highly recommend the app as a starter point, and eventually go buy this game and play it and play it and play it, because it is really, really great. I can't say enough high things about it. Through the Ages: A New Story of Civilization.
I second everything you said wholeheartedly, Trent, and don't have any new angles to offer at this point in time. He said, knowing his own top 10 was in the future. TC, I don't think I've heard your take on Through the Ages.
I have just, much like I've taken baby steps into Ube, I have just now started taking my baby steps into Vlada. I'm really still enamored with Dungeon Pets, thanks to you. Dungeon Lords has hit the table. I'm sure it's just a matter of time before this one gets up there. But I'm very encouraged that it seems like I need to get the newer version of Through the Ages.
Yep, I think it's better.
Yeah.
I second Trent with the app. I mean, you actually get more content than you would in the game itself, just because those challenges give you an opportunity to play it solo without having the stress of an actual, face-to-face opponent, because it is a very, like Trent said, extremely interactive. You can really sharpen your knives and run them through each other. Though I would say that the main difference in the new version is that you can kind of leverage some of the what I would consider to be randomness that would happen in the earlier game. Now it takes more building to get these huge swings in military that could result in you just going from 0 to 25 and around, and then pillaging the other player with something that they really couldn't do anything to respond to.
That's exactly why. I don't think it's as mean, and that's basically why.
Yeah. Andy, anything to add?
No. I guess the one thing to add is the app is really good with that, and I think this is a game that was almost feels like it was designed to be run on a computer in a way. It's just like it's a perfect game for online play, asynchronous online play particularly.
Yeah, long turns. You're going to do a lot on your turn, and that's why it's so good with these asynchronous turns. So quite a bit of downtime when you play in person, but if you're playing with people who've played the app and know it shouldn't be that big of an issue. When there's an app like this, as long as you got the ability to play that, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Andy, this is also instrumental. I figured you would tell the story, but I'll quickly mention that Andy was a nice, light, fluffy gamer until Trent and he and I played Through the Ages together, in which case Andy got turned into metamorphic from igneous rock.
I broke Andy. I was so proud of that.
That's an accomplishment.
Yup. And then I turn around and do it to everyone else now.
Now Andy's comfortable doing it to everybody else. So that's thanks to Through the Ages. Trent's number 5. And now, number 4.
Number 4 is the game. The reason that I couldn't name Agricola as my all-time favorite worker placement game, because number 4 is Dominant Species.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
It was originally published in
this time.
2010 by GMT Games, designed by Chad Jensen. This game is intended to simulate the encroachment of an ice age and how land mammals responded to it, or land animals responded to it about 90,000 BC. And the way it does that is through worker placement, which you wouldn't quite expect. This is a combination of a worker placement and an area control game, and it's really tight. So players are each a class of animals, a kingdom, biome, class, order, family, genus, species. You're a class of animals, like insects or
Spiders.
Spiders. Yeah, that's the idea. You're that kind of a group of animals. Each of your cubes on the board is a individual species of that animal, like a particular species. Like, for example, your class might be birds, and one of your cubes would theoretically be like parrots, that type of thing. So what you do in this game is you have this board. It's a bunch of hexes. They're actually really big hexes, almost weirdly big at times, but you need that because you're going to end up with a lot of cubes and other markers in the spot. And so on this game, there's this big, probably a third of the board is this big spot of a bunch of circles. And the circles are worker placement spots. And what they do is there's 12 different actions listed in a row. And under each one of them, there's a number of circles. And so what you do is the players all take turns putting their little action pawns. Everybody has a certain number of action pawns in those circles. And so we go around the table and no one's doing anything. We're all just placing these action pawns. But then when we're done, we go through this list of actions, and then the first one, we do all the pawns under it left to right. And then we do the second action with all the pawns under it left to right. And then the third action, all the pawns under it left to right. We keep moving down the list and doing this all the way through. And all of those actions are having radical shifts on the board. So what you have to be doing early on is you have to be visualizing how all this is going to really turn out as it goes down the list. How is this going to change the board? How am I even going to be able to do what I'm thinking by the time I'm down in step 8? Is this actually going to work the way I want it to work? And all this ends up being is you're manipulating an area control game on the other side of the board. You're manipulating how everybody's different groups of species are moving around on the board, how they're growing, how they're getting destroyed. And then there's also the tundra invading that makes everything hard, most everything hard to live because it's freezing. It's like an ice age is coming. And all of this is being managed through those worker placement actions. So there's so much of this game you have to visualize in advance how all of this is really going to work. And I just fell in love with it the first time I played it. And the funny thing is, the first 3 or 4 times I played it, I got utterly destroyed. And I mean toasty, crushed, destroyed.
Roasted, done.
Yes. But I was so
cubes on the board.
Yeah. Like one cube on the board type of things. And like, having someone else double up my score, and I couldn't see why this was happening. But I got so
critically endangered.
Yes. I got so fascinated with figuring this out that I just kind of became obsessed with it for a while. And I just, every time it gets to the table, I'm so thrilled with playing it because it's such an interesting experience every time. The board evolves a little bit differently. Everybody, they has very slight variable player powers. It seemed like it's just such a minor difference. But it's a pretty big difference. You think it's small, but it actually has quite a bit of an impact. There's some action cards that come up, and the order in which they come up very much shapes the game. Everybody's trying different things because there's so many options and things to do with the pawns. Everybody's seeing the vision of what the game's going to become in everybody's head is different. And so everybody's doing different things. You're like, why did he just do that? What is he seeing that I didn't see? Why did he just put his action pawn there? That doesn't make any sense. What is he seeing that I don't see? Why can't I see it? That happens to me all the time when I'm playing this. And it's fantastic. It has a pretty good app, but it's an app where I feel almost like you need to have played the tabletop game a couple times to really get what's going on in the app. Yeah. It's not the most clear app in the world, but it does the job. It's reasonable to play it, especially if you're familiar with it. I would not learn from the app, probably. The theme is wonderfully evoked. It's pretty thematic. I mean, you are using cubes and action cylinders, but if you do a little bit of thinking in your head of what this is actually representing, it actually feels pretty thematic. The species are fighting against each other for limited amounts of resources, and here comes the ice. And that's pretty much what's. I mean, it's easy to imagine an encroaching ice age with this game. I love it. I'm happy to play it every time. Again, this is a game that clocks in about 3 hours. It says 2 to 6 on the box, and you can play it up to 6. What I found, if you play it with 5 or 6, 1 or 2 players are just really, really hammered, and you should expect that.
Early on.
I actually really like playing it best at about 4. That's my ideal player count for this one. I'll play it with more, but I understand someone's probably just going to get steamrolled if you're playing with more.
Yeah, they just smash into oblivion. Yep. Yeah, the absolute brilliance of this game is dominance and how that functions in the game. Where it's not, because you have area control, but you can also get dominance and not have area control, and those let you trigger the event cards. And then you have to understand that there's going to be a final dominant scoring at the end of the game, and people who aren't expecting that call this game swingy. And I'm like, no, it's coming. You've got to know about it, and if you can anticipate it, and other people don't, then you skillfully won the game.
That's true. Yeah, how you can react to the Ice Age and how you can best wield it, because it's also one of the weapons at your disposal. The way that all the way these things, grow in a way that feels biologically accurate, but also firmly in control of the players. It's fascinating game here, Trent. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's really, really cool. I think that I was earlier talking about El Grande, and TC, you were present there for that for the episode. And the statement, one of the statements during El Grande was like, this is the best area control. And the thing is, it leads me to think Dominant Species is also an area control game that I feel like totally has, it's one of those where it's able to fight for its own existence in a kind of difficult to crack genre. I don't think area control games are necessarily ones that are explored all that well. I think there's a lot of area control games, but I feel like there's still only one or two that I would want to play more than a handful of times. And Dominant Species certainly is one of the ones I'm talking about. I think that its excellence is largely, like TC said, captured by the way that dominance works. It's what makes it special. And Trent, the what you described about all these different weapons being wielded, totally on right on the ball with that one. Andy, have you had a chance with Dominant Species yet?
I think I've played it twice.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I think the thing to read for new players, if you're trying to play it, is keep an eye on that dominance and the event card thing, because I think the first time I played it, I didn't much like it. But that's because I was just trying to put a lot of things on the board but not get dominance, and then everyone would just crush me with events.
Yeah. Plus it's got a volcano in it. It's so awesome.
But yeah, the events can be swingy, and I know that's a turnoff for some people. Like, you can just be like, hey, I'm doing really good in this one hex. Okay, I'm going to drop a meteor on
it. Everything's gone except for my cube. Thank you.
Well, that's Dominant Species, Trent's number 4. And now we get down to the big 3, starting with number 3.
My number 3 is 1830. So that is the 18.
I predicted it was that one.
But there's like a caveat here, right, Trent? Not just any 1830.
Now, well, I definitely prefer the original old Avalon Hill edition. I have high hopes that the upcoming reprint is going to match that. It's going to at least let you play it in that way. I really think they're going to do it that way this time. So anyway, it was originally published in 1986 by Avalon Hill, which is long out of business. It's now published by Lookout Games and has, like I mentioned, a revised version coming out soon, supposedly later this year. And I have high hopes that they're going to match the original Avalon Hill edition, because there have been revised editions, particularly about 2013 or so. There was a revised edition that messed with the original game, and I think, there was minor component errors is probably the best way of putting it. And there was also the fact that they added more tiles, which made the game friendlier and nicer, which is one of the things I appreciate about 1830 is that it's pretty mean. The tiles...
We've seen a theme here.
Yeah. I like games where you can get cut pretty hard by your choices. It's something I enjoy in games very much. So 1830 is a game where you are an investor trying to maximize the value of your investments in early train companies. And in this case, in 1830, it's in the Northwest and a little bit in the Midwest of the United States, starting around 1830, the very early days of the train industry in America. So in this game, you're an investor, you're buying shares in companies. If you have those shares in the companies, you are the president of the company, which means you actually get to operate it. Operating it means through turns, you're putting tiles on the board to connect cities on the board. And then you're going to run you also buy train cards with the money that's in the company. These trains allow you to run from city to city and make money for your company. Then you have the decision whether to keep that money in the company or pay it out to you as an investor because you own shares, dividends. And then you just essentially cycle back and forth between operating the company and paying out dividends or not, depending on what you think you need to be doing. And then share rounds where you use the dividends you've made and also buy and sell shares to try to get the most valuable stocks by the end of the game. You're able to buy shares in companies owned that are run by other players. You can start your new companies if you have enough money. Kind of whatever you want to do. It's kind of a little sandboxy. It's 1829 and 1830, especially 1830, were games that were designed, almost more than 30 years ago now, and they spawned a genre of games referred to generally as 18xx games. And in my opinion, the way I view them is I view basically 18xx in general as expansions and revisions on 1830. It's like expansions and variations on 1830 is how I view the whole shebang of the entire genre. Because they all basically come back to what amounts to that rule set. Because the rule set for 1830 and the version I have is 8 pages. And the game isn't that complicated, it just takes a long time. The 1830 takes about 4 to 5 hours, depending on who you're playing with, give or take.
And player count, because bankruptcy tends to end it pretty fast in large counts.
1830, if you're playing with the old tiles where it's very tight and you don't have many options, often ends in bankruptcy. So that means sometimes it can be shorter than that sometimes. So why did I choose 1830 aside from the fact that it's the root game? I chose it because it was the first 18XX I played, and it's also the one I played the most. It's also one I'd be completely fine playing any old time. I appreciate how tight it is. Now, that's not to say that there aren't a lot of other ones that I really appreciate and like. I have a high fondness for 1822, 18 Mexico, 18 Ireland. There's a whole lot of them I like quite a bit. But this one felt like the one that needed to be on my list because it was the first one I played. It's the one I played the most. And I still enjoy playing it and look forward to my next play of it. Now, I'm not any sort of tournament player. I'm not going to claim that. I've seen what goes on at the tournament of Gen Con. I've watched a little bit. I don't want any part in that. That's like this is unbelievable cutthroat. I mean, I like cutthroat, but no, I'm not going there. It's not my thing.
Is that what high level play looks like though in 18XX?
It certainly can, depending on the game.
Yeah, I enjoy the cut-throughness, but I don't like, I don't know, borderline deception and type of stuff at a game like this. It's not my thing. I enjoy tight play. I don't think I would enjoy this at a tournament level, especially based on what I've observed. I don't describe myself as an expert in any way. I just enjoy playing these games. They're fun. To me, that is fun. And 1830 is, like I said, it's my first and my most, so it's the one that belongs here.
Man, I just had a friend run down the first edition Avalon Hill copy of 1830, and we cracked it open, and it has like the rip away boards, the rip away tiles, and oh man, it was such a flood of nostalgia pawing my way through that thing. I remember how Avalon Hill games used to be. Wow. I'm with you on this, Trent. I'm really excited to get this one to the table, and I even have the first edition to give it a shot with.
Yeah, no, and I can second how tight that one is. Or in 1830. When I played my first couple games of it, it was with one of the newer copies, and the person teaching it left in the tile mix, the new tile mix, where you had like the yellow base cities had bendies in them so you could curve. And so I ended up playing this online with the group I play online with. And we did, let's try 1830. And we did that. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to put down my bendy yellow city here because that's the... Oh, those don't exist in old 1830. Okay, that's why it's so okay, now I see. Yep. So I can see a very restrictive tile set, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks, Trent. That one was 1830. Personally, I'm not really sure. I don't know, man. Like when it comes to what 18XX game I would reach for, I think it's interesting that 1830 was your choice, but you described it so well that I don't really have any questions left to answer.
Yeah, I mean, I could kind of say it's a proxy for 18XX there, but this is the one that needs to be because it was my first and it's the one I played the most. So
yeah, and you're still looking to reach for it. I mean, that makes sense. I understand. That was number 3, and now moving on to Trent's number 2. Okay,
my number 2 is Race for the Galaxy.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Boom!
Yeah. It's published by Rio Grande Games originally in 2008, designed by Thomas Lehman. It was originally intended to be a card game version of Puerto Rico. It kind of varied from that. This is a card game where you're assembling a tableau of 12 cards. Ideally, that's how you win. Is someone getting to 12 cards that triggers endgame, and the cards represent your development of an interplanetary empire that consists of planets and technologies. So this game, each round, it's all simultaneous play basically. At least the way, I mean, I played it so much, that's how we all play. I don't even know anymore whether you're supposed to not play it simultaneously, but we sure do.
I don't know either. I think it's simultaneous. I don't even know. Is there a first player in Race for the Galaxy? I guess
really know. I guess they're all simultaneously, because once all the cards are revealed, you're just kind of doing what you're doing. So
yeah.
Anyway, so there's all the cards in the game depict 5 phases on them. So every single card's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and there's like a pre-phase for 4 that indicated separately. Every card in the game has little symbols on it to indicate different effects that will occur during each of those phases. They're special effects just for you. So once you built that card and then that phase happens, you get this special bonus effect based on the card you built or you played on the table. The currency in this game is literally cards in hand. Whenever you have to pay to, like, a planet costs 4 to colonize, you discard 4 cards from hand and you play that other card. And so a lot of this game is figuring out ways to accumulate lots of cards in hand so you can play other cards, and those other cards are worth a lot of points, and you're hoping that all of these synergistic effects that you're building up will allow you to churn and build some high point value cards, because every card has a victory point value on it, near the end of the game. That's what this game always comes down to. But because there's all these different effects, and some of the effects synergize well and some of them don't, you're trying to find groups of cards that synergize well. So why do I like this game so much? Compared to all the other heavy ones on this list, what draws me to this one? Why is it so high? It packs a ton of decisions into a very short time frame. I blew this game out in 15 minutes with my usual group of players that I play this with. And we're making 5, 10, 15 decisions a minute. I mean, you're just boom, 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 making decisions. I mean, part of that is the familiarity I have with this game. But what I like is the decisions are interesting to me still every time I play it. I'm assessing because the way the game works is everybody has a a hand of action cards, and you lay it face down, and then everybody simultaneously reveals one of their action cards from their hand. Those action cards each indicate a phase in the game. So phase 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5, like I mentioned. And only the phases that are revealed are going to be the ones that actually happen. If no one reveals the phase 4 card, phase 4 isn't happening. And that's very important, because if you really need phase 4 to happen, you either need to be really confident someone else is playing it, or you need to play it yourself. So a lot of the winning of this game is banking on the fact that other players are going to sometimes play the phase you need. And that involves being able to read their tableaus a little bit and have some sense of what they're doing. But that only comes in once you play the game a bunch and you understand all the symbols and you actually understand how the engines work. So it keeps growing on itself. I feel like I'm learning new stuff every time I play it. And the reason I really realized this needed to be on the list I probably played this 500 times, and I'm not exaggerating. But my usual group that I play this with, I got together with them like a week before this list, and we pulled out Race for the Galaxy and bumped out 5 games of it in about an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes. And we're all like, this was fantastic. And I was realizing I played this game so many times. I was perfectly happy to get this out on the table, and I had a blast playing it that many times. It needs to be on this list. And as I kept reordering it, I kept never finding a reason to move this game down. Like, I couldn't find an argument for moving this down, so it wound up at number 2. That's Race for the Galaxy.
Wow. That blows my mind. What do you think, CC?
Well, I remember way back into my early days of modern board gaming, me and a guy played San Juan. And I was like, this is okay. And then he's like, well, let's try this other one called Race for the Galaxy. And I was completely blown away by Race for the Galaxy. Then I found out that was the game that San Juan was supposed to be, right? I'm like, well, that's incredible. And we played the crap out of this game. It was good. But yeah, it's a game that it's really good to learn with someone who's learning it with you. Because if you go in having someone teach it to you who's good at it, it's just destruction. But it's a good game still.
The decision that you're making at the very beginning of every round, where you're choosing what phase is going to happen simultaneously, is just the hairpin. I think it's what the entire game is built on, and it is a very difficult choice. It's something that happens because it's simultaneously, it's faster, but it's also more difficult. And that's why I think, Trent, it gives you that huge, that tough choice to make, but does it in such a short amount of time. What do you think about Roll for the Galaxy, though?
It's okay. I don't like it nearly as well. Okay. I've tried to like it. I just don't like it nearly as well.
Okay. What do you think, Andy? You ever tried either of these? I think you've played Race, right?
No, I played both of them.
Okay.
Oh no, I enjoy them both. I think I don't know. Like, I don't know if I have a super clear preference. I think I've enjoyed Roll for the Galaxy a little more on the if I'm doing it like across the table. But I played a lot of Race for the Galaxy online, and that's been very enjoyable as well. So
I think what the difference is it feels like every time I play Roll, it's like a 45-minute game, but for me, Race is like a 15-minute game.
yeah.
I think that's why I prefer Race, is I can just blow the games out faster, and I feel like I'm making interesting decisions at a much faster pace, and that's what really draws me to this, is just the number of interesting decisions that you're making right out of the gate and all the way through at a very consistent rate.
I'm going to assume you prefer the base game, Trent.
I like it. I like a base game with the very first expansion in the first cycle on it. That's what I prefer. And I gotta say, there's now a promo set of Start Worlds numbered -1 through -6. You gotta have them. Oh my, they're so good.
The ones that are on Board Game Geek Marketplace?
Yeah, the highly recommended ones. They're fun.
Cool. I'm going to check those out. I think, Trent, you kind of described my entire philosophy in starting video reviews underneath the sound coefficient label of, decisions per minute. So yeah, you're making me also want to crack open my Race. And also I just got this new copy of Roll that I haven't even played yet. So it's such a fascinating system. I'm glad that you put it on here. I'm just shocked it's your number 2, man. These other games that you put above it, I had no idea that it would be Race coming up after so many big, headliner games that I know that you love. So that's really cool.
I mean, it was really, like I said, about a week ago I played this, and I knocked out 5 games of it right in a row with people I played this with for years. And there was just no good reason I could think of to not. I knew it had to be on this list at that point. And then when I was reordering, I just never could find reasons to knock it down. I was like, that was why it wound up at 2. So, all right, I want to do this just for fun. I'm not going to say anything. I want you all 3 to guess what my number 1 is.
Oh my goodness. A GMT game is that too generic? Do I need to be more specific?
Yeah.
Okay. I really thought it'd be an 18XX game, but 1830 is already on there.
No, I have one. You want to go first, Andy?
I have a guess.
What's that?
I guess it's Churchill.
Churchill.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know. Let's go Age of Steam.
Ooh, oh man, I almost want to switch to that one. I feel like I think I'm going to. I was going to say Twilight Struggle because it also has that app that's like amazing, but I knew that Trent loved the Twilight Struggle app, but he did kind of mention Twilight Struggle earlier in sort of a dismissive voice, so I'm probably wrong, but I'm just going to stick with it.
Okay, all 3 of the games you mentioned were my last group of about 25. I will say that absolutely.
Yeah.
But
it's close.
But Andy was the winner. It's Age of Steam.
Oh, I knew it.
Yep.
Well done, Andy.
Published originally by Winsome Games in 2002. It's currently published by Eagle Griffin Games, designed by Martin Wallace. You are managing a train company attempting to develop the most successful rail network. You're connecting towns and delivering goods between them, these little cubes that a town's a certain color, a cube of that color is on another town. You're connected the 2, you deliver it for points, hooray. Or for money. You decide how your company develops and where it lays track and how much money you invest in these things, but the money is extremely tight. Extremely, extremely, extremely tight in this game, which is why I like it. Yep. Has a little action selection mechanism each round where basically each player is choosing a particular special power that they get, and you're bidding for who gets to go first with that pick out of your precious, precious, dwindling little supply of money. And if you decide you need more money, the game will give it to you, but you gotta pay for it every single round the rest of the game, and that hurts.
And it's -3 points at the end of the game too.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's just
you pay everything
you do is is just painful in this game. It really is. And the thing is, you can go bankrupt in this game. I have certainly done it in front of Andy and Joe. They've seen me just completely drop out of the game because I had no.
Well, to be fair, it was in the last round, but
yeah, but I have died in this game.
Come on, and it was by a thread, and then it just.
Yeah, it's this game is rough. It's just rough. But it's just like everything I like. It works from. Okay, so there are a couple solo maps and I don't like them. It does work fairly. It does have interesting maps that work from 2 to 6 players, and there are some setups that will work with even more than 6. And if you have the right map, all those player counts are really, really, really fun. So it works with a wide variety of player count. There are a ton of maps out there, tons and tons and tons of them out there.
Yeah, it's over 100, I think, but I don't know what the precise number is, but it's ridiculously.
Almost all of them have a weird little rules tweak that doesn't drastically change the game, but changes enough to make it interesting. The game plays maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours if you're playing with familiar players. It's got hard choices where, again, it feels like you're just trying to dig yourself out of a hole every time you're playing it. And the other players really aren't ever helping with that because they're also digging themselves out of a hole. And they will gladly block you right off to make sure that they're not in trouble either. I mean, it's cutthroat. There's only so many routes to get into a city after all. And sometimes you're just going to be blocked out of that city you need to get to, and there isn't much you can do about it. That's just what happens. Sometimes you wind up in a corner of the map, and no goods ever show up in that corner of the map that you can possibly do anything with. It just happens. That's part of the game. It's part of the risk of it. It's part of the fun. And I will happily play this anytime it's on the table with just about any set of players that it's with. There's always a map that works. There's probably 15 maps that work for that player count.
And that environment too, because different maps offer a very different play experience.
Some of them like California Land Rush are so tight that you almost want to cry. Some of them are a lot more loosey. Some of them are just weird. Like I read them and I'm like, okay, that's different. Like there's a like Disco Inferno. There's a map called Disco Inferno. I've read the rules. I'm like, okay, this is just odd, strange. But
there's even a zombie map.
Yeah, there's
where zombies go around like eating cities. Yeah.
There's just all kinds of stuff. It can be wacky, it can be very serious, it can be very tight, it can be not so tight. It can work with different player counts, and it feels like a different experience every time I'm playing it. And I don't think I'll ever get tired of Age of Steam and its various expansions ever. And it's my number one. I have way more maps than I'll probably ever be able to play. And I'm perfectly okay with that. And the thing is, and I want to say this just to mention how good this game is, I probably played the base game map that comes in every copy probably, I don't know, 15 times. I'm still happy to play the very base game map, let alone all the 100 other ones that are out there.
Yeah.
That's just how good the game is. I'll play it again and again and again, and that's Age of Steam.
Yeah, it has a system that just doesn't need all these expansion maps, but the fact that they're there just boosts what's already such an amazingly beautiful, elegant system of driving players not only into interaction with each other, but also with an extremely tense and unforgiving economic system that specifically shines here in Age of Steam. And if you don't like that economic system, that the teeth, first of all, like, I'm sorry for your loss, but you could try Steam, but no, like Age of Steam is the way to go. As soon as Andy said it, Trent, it made perfect sense. Like I see this one, why it's your number one, and all of your comments rang true with me as well. I mean, the Disco Inferno one, I guess I kind of want to try that, but there's so many maps, like you'll be able to find anything for you.
Yeah. See, I can tell you exactly when you have new people, there's a point at which you say, you're playing Age of Steam, and it's when there's an auction and someone's like 6, 7, and then someone else thinks they're like 8, and then you just see someone go.
Like, I've lost. I didn't anticipate you willing to spend that much. Yeah. I'm screwed.
The only way I can win at this, the only way I can survive is if I get my choice for 6 or less, and then someone bids 7.
Oh yeah, it's a rough one, and it's so worth it though, and it really does, Trent, play in so super short amount of time for the decisions that you're making.
I remember experience not too long ago where I was playing. I don't even remember who it was. I think it might have been our friend the elusive Nate. Who, like, this one time we were sitting there and we were deciding how many shares we were each going to take. And he took 2 shares, and that's all it did for me to be like, I hate you. I hate you with a burning passion for taking 2 shares. That's all he did was say, I'm taking 2 shares to get $10 more. I'm like, oh, this makes my math awful. This is horrible. You're a mean person. Just, I mean, simple things like that, and the game's loaded with them. I just love this game. It's fantastic.
Yeah. I always tell people at the beginning, too, when I have a new player, I'm like, only tip I can give you, if you're winning all of the auctions in Age of Steam, you're losing. If you lose all the auctions in Age of Steam, you are also losing.
TC, what do you think?
I played this a few times, but it was this game specifically where in every other Martin Wallace design game, if there was a loan you could take out, I avoided it like the plague. Because you take loans out in Age of Steam, oh my God, they're so incredibly difficult to dig yourself out of once you start taking those loans. And any other Martin Wallace game that has loans, just because of Age of Steam, I avoid them. I'm like, yeah, I fell into that trap. No.
You have to take a few.
Yeah, and it's painful. It's like, oh, I don't want to do it. This sucks.
You ever want to know what, like, you know, when we're all little kids and we like make $1 and we think that's like the best feeling in the world, play Age of Steam. The first time you're like in the positive one, you get like $1 positive income.
The first time you pay off a loan in Age of Steam is like an accomplishment in of itself. But like, I don't care if I lose. I just dug myself out of this hole.
Yeah! I just made $1. Yeah, when you run at when you're not like having to take shares to keep your company afloat. Which does not happen immediately. Like, you're going to continue taking shares. It's just, it's such a beautiful system that really does give you this huge feeling of that you've won, even if you've not beat all the other players. And that's something I really enjoy as well.
Yeah, I mean, was it that there was a game that it was London had the black cubes. I'm like, oh, those are like loans. Screw that.
Yeah. Whenever there's loans in a Martin Wallace game, it's like,
you know you're in for a treat, man. You're in for a treat.
Mm-hmm. Well, Trent, fascinating list. Enjoyed it. Twists and turns. I should have seen the end coming before I did, but it was a real riot. So thank you very much for sharing.
No problem.
And now, hyping games is something we do at the end of every episode. So let's go ahead and get ourselves kicked off. We'll give Trent a little bit of a chance to rest his voice as we hear from TC, who's not talking about Pacific Rim, the miniatures game, which, believe it or not, TC, I know that I could have trolled you, and I went with no, I want to come up with something that TC can just talk about. So, but something was much better than that, and it was what I chose for you to review. So tell us about the pack of Arkham Horror, the living card game that you're looking forward to.
Yeah, so the Path to Carcosa campaign is wrapping up for the Arkham Horror living card game.
Hey, whoa. The last pack just came out today. I grabbed it in my greedy little hands.
Yeah, and it's been by far, compared to the last one, it's been by far, I mean, it's great. I've enjoyed it. And the next one that's coming out is, you know how, Joe, we keep talking about, we have this Arkham Horror discussion where you don't like Arkham Horror because it's not true Lovecraft. And I say, Arkham Horror is like the Indiana Jones of Lovecraft. Well, this next expansion is called The Forgotten Age, and it's actually Indiana Jones. You're going through and exploring temples and stuff. I'm like, yes, this is the Arkham Horror I have been waiting for. This temple exploration and all this stuff, and it's on the horizon. I'm very excited. Like Trent said, the last expansion for Path to Carcosa, it's wrapping up. It's done. And the next campaign looks fantastic simply because it looks like it's Indiana Jones. And me and Chris are just pumped about it.
It's Indiana Jones in the Temple of the Elder Sign, no doubt.
Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you, TC. Now let's hear from Andy about the war games that he's trying so hard to get into.
Yeah. Well, this one, anyway, I know it as Manoeuvre, although it's like the French spelling of maneuver, and I don't want to deal with pronouncing it.
Manoeuvre.
Yeah.
I wish we had Norm on here. He'd be able to give us his best French Canadian.
Manure.
Yeah.
Manure.
Oh, it's no. That's awesome.
Anyway, this game's kind of interesting. So it's more of an introductory level sort of war game, but it's kind of like if a war game and Smash Up and chess got together and had a baby. So
what?
Yeah. There's like 8 armies in the base game that all pay
Oh yeah.
their own counters. And I bought the expansion as well. So now there's up to 12 armies. It's all sort of 18th century combat, but the game really is about maneuvering. So one of the ways you win is by getting some of your pieces in positions of victory. So you can win the game without eliminating the opponent's army. You just kind of get your guys in certain places. You do that. What's really kind of fun and fascinating, though, is you can kind of card count because there's only so many cards for each unit. So you can't always attack with the unit you want. You can move it, but you can't attack unless you have the cards. So if somebody moves a unit into your area and they've used 4 out of the 5 available cards for that unit, be like, you know what, I'm going to attack that because there's not crap you can do to stop me now. But the timing mechanism for the game ending is both people run out of their deck. Or at least one of the ways the game can end. But what's kind of fun is because you can just discard cards too. You can be like, I'm just going to discard 3 cards this turn. Okay, I'm drawing back up. So you can go through the deck faster. But what can be fun is the first person to run out of their deck, they get to reshuffle all of their cards until the next person runs out of their deck. So you could think, at some point that, they've blown all of their unit cards for like these 3 units that, no problem. I will deal with this as I need to. And then they go, I ran out of my cards. I'm reshuffling everything. Then that means I can be moving those units again. But yeah, it's sort of an abstract game, sort of a war game, and sort of a just pick a faction and go with it game.
Sort of a trick-taking, area control, abstract take that.
Yeah.
Andy, this sounds crazy wild. I can definitely see the character of this game being just a bizarre, non-traditional war game, and I can see its appeal to you.
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
Me and Chris have played it quite a bit. We like it. The only complaint we had with it was the size of the stupid cards. They were like the itty-bitty cards.
Oh, yeah, the little Euro cards.
Hobbit-sized cards. But it's a great dice-chucking game with a little mat where you move your units around and try to outmaneuver people. And it plays pretty quickly. But I haven't played with the expansions. I'm curious to hear how those play.
Well, they give you like new armies, and it's all 18th century combat so that you can do weird stuff. So yeah, you could be like, I'm going to put the Tokugawa shogunate against Napoleon. Let's do that.
Or like okay, now the smash up part makes sense. It kind of reminds me of table battles almost, but this is a different system.
Except these are not historically based at all. But it almost is like chess because it's always 2-player, but the setup is weird. Like, player 1 sets up the board because you have like a buttload of tiles and you draw 4 of them and you can orient them however you want.
Yeah.
So like player 1 sets up the board. Player 2 choose 2 armies will be in play. Then the other player picks the first army and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it quite a bit. And it comes with like different sided dice, and it's a pretty fun little game. Me and Chris, we really enjoyed our plays of it. I think I still have it around here somewhere. We haven't played in a while.
Yeah, it's an older game.
Cool. All right, well, thanks, Andy. And now, before we get to Trent's ending us out here on his hype, I've got a quick announcement that I'm quote-unquote hyping. Asmodee has just, you know, after acquiring most of the civilized world,
yeah,
and the Pac-Man of the modern board game publishers, has just decided to enter a whole new sphere of content production. I will read here from the press release. The Asmodee Group today announced the launch of Asmodee Entertainment, a new division which will leverage the company's intellectual property to develop new content types such as feature films, TV series, comics, and graphic novels. Asmodee will primarily develop this content through strategic partnerships and licensing. Now, I get it, right? Like Asmodee, like a French company, I would have to say that, you know, when it comes to artwork, I find that, you know, the quality of the artwork coming from French companies, I think that there's a certain amount. I mean, just like to compare this to like video games, Rayman Legends, and then Rayman Origins was just this amazing video game with great artwork that was actually partially funded by like kind of like public works projects in France. So, you know, part of government funding goes towards like supporting artists, which I think you're seeing these beautiful, beautiful productions and probably the most beautiful artwork that there is, you know, in terms of like a quality standard that really doesn't have many dips coming out of France. So it makes sense to me that they would be wanting to leverage that sort of a benefit towards getting into these other types of entertainment. You know, they've probably also got a very large existing pool of content and concept art to draw from. So to you know, to see a board game like something like Seasons be turned into a series, it kind of makes sense to me. I feel like there's a lot of space for them to explore there. I mean, because you're not really, you know, I feel like the you know, you could make like sort of backstories behind cards and stuff like that. So that's, I guess, on the positive side. On the negative side, you know, every time I've ever heard of a board game being turned into a movie, I just think that's never worked before. So
what are you talking about? Battleship was total quality.
It was Wolfgang Petersen's top game. I mean, Liam Neeson has never been in a finer movie than Battleship. Come on.
For sure. Well, that's
well,
my
let me dovetail on this a little bit. Fantasy Flight has tried this maneuver before, where they tried entering media and making movies and stuff. And if you guys want to rubberneck, probably the most horrific thing you can ever see is Fantasy Flight had a fantasy setting called Midnight Chronicles that they turned into a movie that Christian Petersen actually directed. Wow. I think you can still find it on their website to buy. It's called Midnight Chronicles. So yeah, I'm curious to see how this is going to pull off, because that was not good at all. So we'll see how this turns out.
Space Cats the movie.
Space Cats the movie.
Space Sheep as well. I think they could hit on that one. Oh, that's Blue Orange.
And then didn't Fantasy Flight just announced like Fantasy Flight Interactive not too long ago, where they were going to like make interactive content of their games? I wonder how that's going to go with Asmodee doing their own stuff.
Well, Asmodee is Fantasy Flight, so yeah. I mean, it's just going to be a different sort of thing. So yeah, I imagine it's probably I imagine those will end up consolidated under the same umbrella. So, well, thanks you guys for your comments. That was, you know, my take on this new thing, this new weird announcement that has me scratching my head. And TC's going to come here and scratch it for me, too.
You found the link, Trent!
Oh. Yeah, the old midnight run. All right, so...
It's $10. It's a steal!
Okay, we're going to go ahead and switch it all, or end it all, on a smooth note with Trent hyping a game that I have just finished reading the rules for, and I'm very excited that advertises itself with a lot of fresh vocabulary on its box, like a nifty economic system. That sounds like something from a review, not from the back of a box, but that's kind of hilarious, and I'll let Trent tell you more.
Okay, so the only question is, Joe, which one of us will teach it on Sunday?
Nose.
Okay, so I want to talk about Feudum. Feudum is a game designed by, and I need to find the designer.
Mark Swanson, I believe.
Mark Swanson. He's a professor at the University of Missouri.
Columbia, yep.
Yeah. And this feels like... okay, so I don't even know where to start describing this game other than the fact that it's pretty complicated. It's you got a hand of 11 cards, and you choose 4 of them, and they're your actions for the round, and there's a giant map. And every time I read the rulebook and try to decide what genre of game this is, I kind of give up because I'm not really sure. I guess area control?
Maybe route building?
I don't know. I don't know where to put this. What this game feels like to me is like, this feels like an individual guy's labor of love is what this feels like to me from top to bottom. This game feels like fairly complicated. It feels really interesting. I don't even know what to compare this thing to. I can't really, I mean, it feels like there's some familiar parts in it, but the way it all comes together, I don't know what to compare it to. Like, I was describing it to someone and they said it kind of sounds like Concordia, and I can see that, but it's, you see, it's the thing. Joe keeps going, huh? That's not quite right, because there's no quite right way to describe feudum. There isn't.
I mean, you got that sort of like, you know, pre-selected hand at the beginning of the round, like say Broom Service or Glass Road, but then you've also got these 6 different guilds that all sort of interact in a cyclical way, you know, where when you interact with this guild, if you're in control of it, so you kind of like when you mention area control, you know, it's like more like guild or, you know, like action, you know, like you're controlling the guild more so than necessarily the area, you know, where there is like a map presence, you are going to be able to actually like, you know, take on and interact with other players, you know, in sort of like a military sense, I guess. So I suppose you can add dudes on a map to that potentially, but I really hesitate in saying that. But the way that each of these guilds, like each of them gives you different resources and sort of allows you to get different, you know, bonuses. Like sometimes you're going to get vehicles that allow you more mobility for your pieces that as they move around the map. You know, you've got 3 different workers that all are 6-sided cubes. They're not dice because they're not rolled. I think. I mean, they just call them workers. They never refer to them as dice, even though they are a 6-sided worker that has 6 different faces. The way that you station your worker is actually going to give you bonuses in one of those 6 guilds, because that's what all the different faces represent. I mean, it is, Trent, you know, I'm going to have to play it to really even try to give my 2 cents on what it would compare to.
Yeah, I've done the same as you. I read the rulebook, and I don't even, like, it's hard for me even to describe genres with this thing. It's really different. And it also has this art style that's very distinct art style that my oldest son said it reminded him of like he named a bunch of Studio Ghibli films, like said it's like those except drab.
It is. It's almost like you take those and you set them in like the medieval art style of like the Twa, like, you know, that gets a lot of crap from people who are looking for, you know, your explosion-heavy artwork. But
that's a good one. That's actually, imagine if Chwa's art style was done by Studio Ghibli. That's kind of what the art style of feudum is. I don't know. I mean,
you got like squirrels and sirens, you know, like mermaids and just, yeah.
It's something different. I don't know. I played it just a little bit at Gen Con, like a round of it. And I was not grasping what was really happening at all. I'll be honest, I was like, I don't know what is happening.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I mean, you have to understand the way each different little ecosystem, economic ecosystem interacts with itself, what it's used for in the larger map, and how you leverage being either the leader or the second highest leader, which gives you like different abilities. Like they call that the journeyman, I think, like the master and the journeyman. It's just, it's a system that's like got your sort of first and second. So I guess that once again, area majority, I suppose, area majority is what they call that. Yeah, fascinating. Can't wait to get it tried because it is so distinct.
I'm going to say I don't think this is one where any of the expansions should be thrown in at first.
No, I haven't even read them. I'm going to read the rulebook again.
You got to go. I'm going to tell you right now. I assume you have the big box like I do.
I do.
You need to very carefully go through the pieces and get everything that's expansion out of there.
Yeah.
That's what I did. I made a big bag, and I put each of the expansions in its own little bag inside of that big bag, and I basically want to write "Do not open" on the big bag.
You can make it like that. You can make it a legacy game.
Legacy, yeah, there you go. Like adding legacy to it.
But I mean, it looks just I don't even know. It looks economic and area majority and action selection from a hand.
Mm-hmm.
Boy.
But then you've got cards that allow you to sort of repeat other actions and cards that can become free. Yeah, there's all sorts of explorations here within any of the confines of genres that have been established.
Yeah.
Well,
So
yeah.
Joe's going to teach it.
Did you see what I put in the chat, Joe?
Oh, I haven't yet. All right, Andy, tell the world.
Yeah. So I put out, I sense another game that Joe will be asking me to buy from him in a few months.
All right, Andy, challenge accepted. I'm going to like it now.
I like this game.
It's breaking my brain. I don't want to give it to Andy. I don't want to offer it to Andy, and Andy's going to be like, Joe, that's weird. There's no comfort to be found there. Oh, boy. Well, it'll be interesting to see, and I really hope that we do get a chance to play it here this coming game night, Trent. I'm going to be reading it for the third time since I got it, and I'd read the rules once before. So, yeah, hopefully that'll be at least somewhat of a familiar experience. But, yeah, thanks for telling us about Feudum. Definitely looking forward to that one. So that brings a close to this episode of I want to say Through the Ages, but it's an episode of The Good, the Word, and the Ugly for the ages, one with Trent's top 10 that encompasses decades upon decades of gaming, one that is putting the cap on the good top 10s from The Good, the Word, and the Ugly. I'm just going to say that for mine, please, everybody lower your expectations. Yes, it's going to happen, but it's going to be one of those things where it's like one of those things that just has to happen. Everybody's looking forward to it. Everybody is expecting it, but don't look forward to it. It's just a formality. These guys, Andy, TC, and Trent, your top 10s, these last few episodes we've done have been phenomenal, have been keeping me on the edge of my seat. I really respect the decisions that you guys made, and this was an awesome way to, like I said, put a cap on the great episodes of top 10 lists coming from The Good, the Word, and the Ugly. Everybody lower your expectations. Mine's going to be kind of boring.
Okay, no problem.
Could you lower yours at all, TC? Did you have to dig a hole to get it to go any lower?
Not yet, but we're getting there. I mean, take a look here. Yeah, we're there.
All right. Well, that was The Good, the Word, and the Ugly. I'm the host, Joe Sallin. I've had the pleasure of doing Trent's top 10 with Trent Hamm. Trent, thank you. Also, Andy Dennison's joined us. Andy.
Good night, everybody.
And TC Reed.
Awesome. Nice talking to you guys.
All right. Have a great week of gaming, and catch us next week on The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly.